rise, remove cover for the pledge. Welcome to the December 6th, 2022 County Commissioner meeting. Vera, will you lead us in the pledge, please?
Sure.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Again, welcome. Wonderful day off. Before you commissioners, we have an agenda. Are there any additions or changes to the Hearing none.
Becky, did you turn that on? Okay. I didn't see it.
Hearing none. Chair would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as is.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and second to approve today's agenda. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion is passed. We will now do our vouchers. Okay, hour being 10 o'clock. On the agenda is Road and Bridge. Mr. Hanson, you are up.
So did you guys get my email on changes to the catalog policy? Everything look okay?
You didn't run by the attorney or anything?
What's that?
You didn't run by the attorney or anything?
No.
Because wasn't so big change.
No, basically pricing. The ends we were waiting for our culverts aren't gonna work. I don't know what they did when they made them, but they're shaped like an egg. They're supposed to be 10-foot diameter. They're 121 inches and some from side to side, and they're 125 from top to bottom. They will now bend. So their field rep come and looked at them last week, and he said he could have had us new ones here maybe by the end of this week, which would put us to the middle of next week before we're able to get dirt over anything between. And we're kind of up against the clock on this. We couldn't get it done before winter. So his suggestion was to cut a small strip out of the top and try to get it, to pull in tight enough to get a band on it. We tried that. It didn't work to begin with, which you can imagine with those culverts when we cut the strip out. We tried to, get them a little tight, when we cut them so they wouldn't spring on us, but it didn't work. So I called him yesterday and told him what we had going on. And I don't think either one of us are real happy, but I told him I think we ought to get a full credit back on them because they weren't usable, the way they made them. And we've got 3 days in trying to make them usable and it's not working. So I haven't heard back from him yet. We'll see what their answer is.
Do you need us to write a letter?
Well, I told him I was going to bring it up to you guys, and I assumed you were going to be on the same page I was with wanting our money back on it.
Absolutely.
That's a lot of money for something we can't use.
Absolutely. So, whatever you think that we need to do to assist you to help move that along, I think it's where to help.
If this was August or even September, I'd have just waited for the new ones, but we're going to get this done before winter. We kind of need to get on it.
Right.
And I tried to, I sent Jerry Williams an email to see how we're going to do the project, and he's out sick. He was supposed to get in touch with me this week, and I haven't heard back from him yet, so that's where we're at there.
Might try Dawn, she might be able to answer for him too.
Okay.
Dawn will know. Just talk to her this morning.
And I had visited with Scott Taylor, told him that we wanted to change the scope of that project and have culvert replacement. That takes the project back another 2 years.
Okay, that's at 10:15.
Okay.
So,
I guess that's
yeah.
what I've got then.
That's the extent of where you at?
Yep.
Okay. And then you gentlemen are,
Hear about the Barton Road?
okay? Okay.
Yeah, we're early, sorry.
That's okay. You're
Interested in the
absolutely no problem. Are there any other questions for Jimmy concerning other things other than what our 10:15 is and our 10:45? Go ahead.
we probably heard that Vera was just saying they still having some dust issues out on that Salt Pit Road and you know who that owns that pit, or who's operating that pit
It's
now?
Prison Logistics.
Oh, yeah.
I think Casper, they're actually owned by True. I think it's Kyle True. I don't know if he owns it or not. It's a company.
How, what's your opinion on the speed limit on that road? Maybe that would help.
I don't think it's gonna make much difference. I don't think they're really paying attention to it anyway.
How fast, I guess. Just be interested to see how fast some semis are driving that from now on.
Yeah, they never drive what they tell you they're driving. And,
Yeah.
you know, they try to tell me it's 10 to 15 miles an hour, and I know better than that.
Yeah. Just trying to figure out a way to mitigate it.
I think we need to try to get them to commit to putting suppression on, you know, from one rather than just running a water truck, because they're not following through on it.
Was there an agreement with the prior pit owners on it?
It was just verbal between them and Rick.
Maybe we need to invite them up.
You get hold of them if you guys would like to do it.
Might not be a bad idea.
Good idea. Just to understand, so they understand what we understand.
Down this next meeting or something?
Yep.
So we can get them on the
So we can
schedule.
get them. Any other for the agenda? I do have one. I had the city come in and ask about Horsey Road. Did you have them come speak to you about Horsey Road?
No.
Okay, so what they wanted to do is the speed limit sign on that first portion. And my comment to them was, we've never done a speed sign study on it. And putting one up is not a problem, except that it's not enforceable. And so the thought would be that they'd come and ask if at least we could do a speed study at, you know, through that whole residential area, what, 2-3 miles all the way through there, and see if we couldn't get something done, because they feel they'd like people really to slow down in that residential part. So if we could get it done, go ahead.
It's kind of interesting, because that's, yeah, because it, I mean, it's in the city limits, and the city typically gets to control
It's not, it was not annexed in.
Everything but the road.
everything but the road is annexed in.
So there's an interesting thing, all around that thing with different federal laws and state laws. And so I think that the speed study needs to happen, just so that there can be something immediately as you come off the road to understand it. And I'd like to see it go further with those other residentials, because we've had complaints about that before. When those big truck comes through there, they kind of kick it up when they hit the ground. So if we did, and we did put a sign up, but then it got removed. So I'll wait for them to have a conversation with you.
I know they were kind of backed up on those, but I'll get some of this for it, because when I called them later this summer to do one on Old 85, they told me it would be next spring.
And I think I can understand that too. It's just, I think we need to start something, get on the list now.
And there are emergency closure or emergency restrictions provision in there, no?
We can find it.
16.
16 is cities, towns, and counties. Roads are entitled to.
I just hate that you wait on a speech start, you need somebody heard or something.
The unfortunate thing is you gotta do enforcement in county. If you'll recall, we had a lawsuit, there was a ticket that was written on Mossy Road, went to circuit court, I believe, might even come to the district court. But it was dismissed because city law enforcement did not have jurisdiction. It's a dilemma, interesting. Okay, is there any other questions? Do you know if anybody else is coming up? Anybody else coming up for
The 85 update?
the 85?
Thought Timmy did a nice job on the road out.
Scott would come. So Scott's not coming. Okay, Jimmy, do you wanna start on the old Highway 85 update? I've got some of the paperwork and I can fill in blanks for you.
So I visited Scott the other day about having a replacement project, and he said that does kick the project back another 2 years. Especially with those box culverts, under 6 foot wide, he has to get the bridge department involved in, because they're considered a structure under that line. And I did a count on those culverts, and there's 20 of them on the road. Not all of them would be replaced, some of those concrete pipe culverts are pretty good shape. There's 2 galvanized ones that would definitely need to come out. And the box culverts where the heating is, goes obviously, something needs to be done there. The one that was too bad inside, the one that has the single cracks in it. Of course, that's probably gonna change the price, but he thought that might actually be a good thing for us. He said it takes it back to 2027, nobody has applied for that money yet. It's at 27, 28, 29, they're all open.
I think you can send people for that.
So he said the full 3 million would be available, and we decided to go over there, we paid overlay on that road. Rather than, turning it back to get a treated gravel.
So let me fill in some of the gaps there, because what was happening is we were having kind of a misunderstanding of what we thought was happening and what wasn't happening. And so there seemed to be this, like ships passing in the night. Somebody thought they were doing this, and the other one thought they were doing this, and the assumption was this one was gonna do this, and this one was gonna do that, and it wasn't happening. And so finally, it kind of came to a head when well, why aren't you doing this? I thought we agreed to this, and why didn't this happen? So we brought in Scott and said, we can have a conversation of what's happening. We had kind of a last minute, but I think we came to the conclusion of understanding of what it is we wanted originally. And so this would move it, but I think the better idea is that those culverts, instead of just putting an overlay on old culverts that somewhere along the line we're gonna have to go back and dig up and fix, why aren't we doing it the first time? So the understanding is that we would go back and perhaps apply for all the money, and then future boards can make that decision whether or not they wanna go the full way to pave, but just to have the understructure looked at and done properly. We assumed that was what was happening, right, Jimmy?
Yeah.
And it wasn't, and it was just gonna be, so it didn't make sense to us. So, the future boards can decide whether they wanna go farther with the pavement, but to apply, go ahead.
Part of the issue with that road too is there's a lot of traffic we're concerned about that shouldn't be on the road.
Right.
Once we pave that, are we encouraging more of that?
So part of our discussion with him was, that he, would work on signage of some type that said no through traffic or no, your GPS is wrong, anything to that effect. He said he would work on that. He told us that if we wanted any type of directional signs, so there's that big curve, and you've seen every curve here that even has a slight, has a chevron, but he said you have to go for high-risk roads for that, or safety for that. Because it takes a different engineering to build up the road to get those. But it certainly could be looked at later on. But he would work on some signage at the beginning of both ends of that road.
And he was also gonna get in touch with Google, I think he said he had contacts to try to get him to pursue every routing people through that road.
We're not planning on widening it at all either.
No, he
Right.
said when you get into that, it's gonna,
that's the thought process. I do have some information here if somebody would like to look at.
And they're gonna come do what we thought they were doing originally, they're gonna do, you know, nobody will come that road and have their team look at it. To give us an idea of what they think. And then have a public meeting, kind of get a feel for what everybody out there wants.
It just seemed to be a weird lack of communication. I mean,
Yeah.
we're assuming some things that we thought we'd agree to, and they said, well, that's not what you want. We did, so we just had to have a good sit down and get this worked out. Other than that, there's you guys would like to look at these. I think I just handed you this culvert report too, but
It's been a while since I've been down that road. How far is it paved?
right now it's paved the entire way.
The entire, okay.
Kind of.
Kind of,
It's
yeah.
got an overlay on it. It's kind of a.
It's kind of breaking up.
We were very fortunate in the fact that they came along at one point and crack sealed it, extended its life as long as it could.
Now I can obviously see, dump trucks having to use it, but are there commercial trucks and things like that come around that curve?
Yes, there are.
Instead of coming up this way, they're coming off 85.
So there was a concern that you had, Jimmy and I had, is that when you put that better bridge in, that you are asking for higher commercial traffic to go around. And so the idea is to have signage to limit the safety.
I believe it's already posted on the
Yep.
website, you know,
But what kind of safety issue would you have if they have to go up, to some of the businesses coming off of 85 and going out that way? Because there's a lot of residential right there as well.
So Jimmy's right, it is already stated no commercial traffic. And so that would be up to law enforcement.
They'd have to come up that road off 16, wouldn't they?
Yeah, they could come off of 16 and go across and avoid the four-way stop. Right now, it would be very dangerous for you to do that because that bridge can't tolerate it.
My assumption too, once the new dump is complete, they'll go out.
New highway
That I
overlay.
see really helping, yeah.
Okay, we kind of got ahead of ourselves, so we'll probably take a break here till 10:30 unless there's other questions. Anybody else have any other questions?
Jimmy, put your pen in. Might look at 24-1-107. Probably not, it's kind of a gray area. If it ends up being an issue where they're worried about somebody hurt on that, we'll can't wait on speech study.
That's a state statute.
Yep. We will resume it today. Okay, now we're being 10:30. Susie, you have the floor for the county option property tax statute.
Okay, did you guys all read your email about all of this and you kind of understand what's going on?
Kind of, it'd be a good way to put that.
Yeah, you might
Kind
give
of
us,
understand.
Yeah, that's with me, kind of too.
give us an overview.
Well, the state has implemented a new statute that they are going to, it's an optional county property tax relief that the commissioners have to establish and monitor and make up all the forms and stuff. So you guys would be in control of this and your rules, or these rules that you have to follow. So I'm just wondering if you guys are interested, or do you want to have workshops to figure out what this is all about, or, so I mean, they keep adding, what do you call them? Statute, or just,
Amendment?
yeah, amendments or ideas. This one here's coming down from, I believe it is, I just got this one in the mail this morning. It was from Brendan, the Department of Revenue. Oh,
sure, okay.
Now, you haven't got these, last year, with the property tax relief, the main property tax relief, they, we had 45 applicants from Weston County. They only paid out 30.
When you say they,
The state of Ohio. So, and then I also sent you guys like the brochure from what the state puts out and their application, so maybe it's something wants to be mirrored off of them, or we can totally say, no, we don't wanna do it. I don't know as if we say, no, we don't wanna do it, if we can down the road do it. But this is all up to you, so I'm just presenting the material to you guys.
do you have copies of that draft? Did you send those to us too, or do you have copies?
No, these new ones I
Yeah.
just, they don't, I'm just making sure I got enough for you.
Susie,
Yes, sir.
do you know which mills that applies to? Is that all of the mills?
I honestly don't know, Tony.
If it goes to county or the school districts, because, you know, the county gets,
It's coming out of the general fund of the county, is where it would come from.
right, so but you don't reduce those mills that were to go to the city and,
I don't know, not to the
Okay.
entities. I don't know what details any of that.
so they still get their money, the county just pays for it.
Yes, the county just pays for this refund out of the county general fund.
Okay.
So then you gotta figure out where to put the county general fund. Make me a liar. You got yours. Oh, you got yours.
So what do we get, roughly 70 mills is what our taxes are, how many plus or minus?
I mean,
right?
Yeah, you go up to 77, 78, you know, depending on if you're sitting with all the districts.
Yeah.
Sometimes it gets, thank you.
78.
And so, the county would be required, if the applicant was qualified, would be required to pay those special districts out of the general. And the
So-
school. Go ahead.
I gather the state put like 3 million aside for it for 2 years. So this first year, they already approved 1.8, so they're over budget already.
Right.
Yep.
I just don't know that it's a sustainable deal, I mean, long term, because, I mean, who in this room knew about this?
I think we all
Last
knew
year.
about the state one, you know, and we knew about, that they were considering a county one.
Yeah, in fact, when that bill came out, I probably emailed that to you too, but.
Who in the county knew about it?
No, but, well-
What percentage of the, so if you got a quarter of the population of the county that now qualifies for that, I mean, that could be a huge deal for the county to climb onto if people really started.
I suppose, and I think you have some notices in your office, right, or some information, so people that would pay their taxes in person
that,
for that state deal. I mean,
oh,
I was just
yeah,
trying to, like, how was the word gotten out about that?
well, Mark Gordon, Governor Gordon, and he advertised it very highly this year, and it was advertised on TVs, Facebooks, and everywhere, that it got out more, because back in 2019, when they did fund it, we had 15 people apply, and they only paid out 40. This time it was 45 to 31. And the total dollar amount that was paid out was what, 10,000? $10,316.21. So I mean, the more it gets advertised and known, I think you're gonna have that number go up, because it tripled from 19 to 21.
Go ahead.
I mean, I'm not opposed to looking at it a little bit more, but my first glance at that, you know, if the county gets 12 mills and we're the total mill levy somewhere between, you know, high 60s to low or high 70s, that's 1/6 or 1/7 of a person's tax bill is actually collected by the county. And if we're on the hook for all of that, that means for every person that would apply for that, we're basically losing 7 average household revenue. So there's quite a multiplication factor to that. You know, so if you had 100 residents that applied for that deal in the county level, then you'd be taking 700, the equivalent of 700 residents off that tax roll to pay for that. And, make sense to you?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So Susie, do you know of other counties that have promulgated rules of income levels or anything to that effect?
I know that Commerce County, Teton County, Sublette County, and maybe Lincoln County have implemented this.
And do you have, can we go find their set of rules for them?
I had Sublette's, I think, that I sent to you.
Okay.
I have not asked for Tetons or, Converse, I tried to get on the website, but it's blocked from here, so.
Okay.
So they're not following the state median income?
I think so. I would assume so that they're following, I think what they're doing is, I know Sublette County looks like they just copied the application of the states.
So the poor guy that makes $51,975 qualifies, gets a tax credit or a return. And the guy, the schmuck next to him that makes $1 more doesn't get a dime. That's what bothers me. It just seems like welfare in a way.
I think that's always an issue when you draw a line in the sand. I mean, when you have this other, when you don't have to charge taxes for, what is it, the 2,500 or is it 2,400? 2,500 for property taxes.
Oh, yeah.
So if it's 23.95 or 20, whenever you draw a line in the sand, there's always going to be something that's
Somebody's gonna come.
right over it
Erase it.
or right underneath it.
Yeah.
That, I mean, they could be neighbors. That always makes an interesting situation that you have. So, what's the pleasure of the board?
I'd like an answer to what Tony was talking about. That doesn't make sense to me, like that we're copping up to 70 mills or 77, whatever it may be. Because if that's the case, you could be talking huge funds, especially once this program gets more well known. I'm not sure a lot of people in this county qualify.
Yeah.
At this state level.
Can you tell us of the other? We were just talking about the veterans exemption. Can you tell us of some other ones that are out there?
I think those are that is the only one that I'm aware of as far as their taxes. So that if they use it on their property, it's more valuable than if they use it on their car. Because when they use it on their car, it's only worth $90. Now, if they use it on their land, it's anywhere, I think it's right at $200-300 in that ballpark somewhere.
It's worth looking at.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, and if you're written, all you have to do is say DD 214 over there and give it to her, and she'll get you on the list. And when it comes time, like I said, if you use it on land, they do have a credit on the tax bill. Use it on the car, you bring a little piece of paper over to us, and
Thank you.
You know, I do think that there are instances where you've got people that have lived in their house and they're retired and they're on a fixed income, or these, and parts of this county and definitely parts of the state have seen some significant increases in their tax bills. And I think this is what this is trying to address. But I also think that it's going to get addressed this year in the legislature. I've got a feeling that there's going to be some changes to this, and so it might be worth to keep the conversation open, but I don't
Yeah.
think that it's worth giving a yay.
Is there,
right now.
is there a timeline where we have to?
well, if you do it, they have to have the applications in before the first Monday in June.
So we have a little bit of time.
Yeah. And I don't know what it's gonna entail I don't know if they just call the state and say, hey, yeah, we're doing it, or I don't know what that entails yet.
So I guess I'll ask, is there more information or?
I just thought I'd bring it up because
We appreciate that.
either have to say yay or nay. I mean,
What's the pleasure of the board?
Sit on it for a little bit and table it. It's more of
So I guess what I'm asking is if we could get some more info. That's what we need to ask.
State treasurer.
Or from that Brenda, that does the deal, she's the one.
For the
that-
Arnold. Is it Arnold?
I think whoever's administering the state refund program should be able to not answer, put you in touch if you need to.
Yeah.
How that's gonna affect the school districts and the special districts, you know, cause say they are a part of that and it does cut that, they need to be at the table too.
Mm-hmm. If it does cut it,
Yeah.
my understanding is the county refund. Okay, any other questions for Susie?
Thanks for bringing it to us.
Yes, thank you. Okay. We'll wait a couple minutes, see if there's more people coming in for the road.
Sustainability of that is a question there.
The only counties that have implemented it are wealthy counties. So, I don't know what can make them wealthy counties.
Like Teton County charges
Okay.
you know, and take it to 12 mils, like, so you have to make, that's the place to do that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I think we just had these.
so say that.
No, for, like Tony said, for an older families,
They
are the ones that will probably get hit first.
But you'll have to, you have to give them your income tax thing. You can actually give them all the stuff, savings, retirement, you have to give them all that information, and that's how some of it is decided whether or not.
The threshold is like 130,000 per adult.
Yeah,
So does it say where you are on your district, so go get your tax paper, and I'll show you what district it is, and that'll make your kid. So school statutory.
Yeah.
It does, you have to give them all that information.
But I mean, it's,
Right.
I don't
When it's all said and done.
me presenting something, I think we're gonna do a workshop or something and say, hey,
Fire district.
how do we explain this, or how, you know.
I wonder how long the state,
What's that?
makes you even wonder how long the state can sustain doing it. I
They
mean,
all get.
Yeah, well, see, they only, like you said, they only approved it for 2 years, they overshot their first year. So now they're having to amend it to get more money in for the second
The
year.
county's gonna get 12 of those 17.
So,
So they're gonna get.
they're probably gonna get hit harder.
6.
well, it's just like going from 15 applications to 19, because it's advertised,
We've got
out there,
So
to
40.
40, 45, and these times.
6 more guys to get to that
You know, and
72.
most, the ones that were rejected was because they didn't have much money, too much or they didn't provide our cities. Because the other ones, we average, most of them.
You are getting, you're gonna get taxed. You're getting taxed.
So all of a sudden, it's gonna be like 22, right?
No, nothing wrong with a little money in the bank. I don't mind the suit gonna be, we're gonna have a bridge or something.
80-year-old.
We're not gonna get federal funds to help with it.
No, yeah, and it is gonna be something. Now, if the state quits doing so, doesn't fund it for other many years.
Which is still you, which is still you.
Keep going.
I know, I
You got
will.
it.
Are you
Yeah.
gonna follow, you know,
And it appears like a double dip, right? State paid in the county.
So they need, like,
so then their taxes are fully.
so they need to sign like something.
You know, their first half is paid by the state, you guys are gonna take some of them. So their tax, their total property tax is almost paid. You understand that?
Alright. Okay, it is now. We'll come back in here. 9:45. Our discussion will be the Barton Road update. Is there anybody else outside? They are welcome to come in. Well, of course, we've got to have a main player here. We can drag a chair in. Would you like to have a chair? We can drag a chair in. Sure.
I got it, Marty.
Here, you take mine.
I got it.
You take mine.
Thank you.
I
don't smell too bad, I don't think.
Okay. Breathe through my mouth. Thank you, Walter.
I'll have her sit,
Come on in.
she's sitting backhand me.
There you go, I'll get my elbow ready.
Everybody come on in.
Oh, Dan.
We'll get you a chair.
Come here, Dan.
We need to scoot these ones closer.
Let's go them that way so we can get another one in.
Yeah, go ahead.
Maybe even up.
Yeah.
We don't have the
There's a
electricity
line
on, so it won't.
Gotta get these
It doesn't
youngsters
hurt,
sitting
does it?
down in here.
Maybe you can hear it that way.
All of a sudden it got full in here.
Probably too far.
No, I don't.
Okay, you guys want a chair? We'll get you one.
I'm good.
Are you okay? Anybody else out there? You're okay? Okay. I believe our discussion is on, the Barton Road update. Who's going to lead that discussion? Okay, thank you.
Cause not everybody's here that's been familiar with this from the beginning, but Mr. Stockmaster, the gentleman in the back here, approached me about, potentially what the process would of extending a county road to reach into a fair amount of landlocked properties that don't necessarily have good access. And some of that's stemming from the ability to borrow money on those properties to build on, and if you don't have guaranteed access, yada yada. So several years ago, we established a process for establishing a county road, and Mr. Stockmaster, a year roughly ago, came before us, and we handed him this, and he did the due diligence of going through that process. However, in our enlightened state, we didn't consider Forest Service or state ground or these other partners that are out there, what they would need on their end of that aspect of extending a road, say it went through something like that. So that's kind of where we're at now, and I'm not sure we need to appoint a viewer for this, but we also need to get an understanding from the Forest Service on their end of this. I know that a bunch of this road already goes through Thunder Basin National Grassland, but a thought was put out there, that chunk of Forest Service road is already public access, so can county road be pushed on the other end of that without having to bring that piece of Forest Service ground into county road, or can we turn it into county road without too much of a major issue on the end of the Forest Service?
How much Forest Service are we talking about on that area?
It's a quarter mile, is that right?
Yeah.
That it would go through. So that's kind of where we're at, and I don't know if you have any, Robina, right?
Yes.
Okay. If you have any thoughts or.
So, hi, I'm Robina Downey. I'm a realty specialist on Thunder Basin and Medicine Bow route, and out of Douglas. And so the two routes we have so it's an open public road. So if you are using this place as your main house and you are not running a commercial venture on this road, say accessing your oil and gas wells or anything similar, then you have free access to it from the Forest Service. You don't need a permit. You don't need anything else. You are welcome to use the road to access your property. The Forest Service cannot deny access to your main home. So even if our travel management were to change, we cannot close roads that have access to people's homes. So if people are having trouble getting loans or something, sometimes we have a letter we send to title companies and banks explaining this, that the Forest Service is statutorily not able to somewhat just remove access, then we will issue the landowners a permit. Generally, they cost a certain amount of a year to, and they're an agreement with the Forest Service for your use of the road, and it's something you can give to your title company or bank. If the county is interested in taking over access of the road, that would be an easement, and that would be something we would record at the courthouse, and also the county would take over, would have to maintain the road to the Forest Service standards. The Forest Service would still own the property, but you would maintain the road completely. And the county would be the one that would have an agreement with the Forest Service. Go ahead.
I mean, I got a question on
Sure.
that, the maintenance standards on that. Is it the maintenance standards that are on that road right now, or?
No, it would probably change class.
Okay.
So it might be upgraded to a different level of maintenance standard.
And that would be part of that easement
Yes,
agreement,
that would part of
you'd
it.
say, okay, we're gonna make a 24-foot crown road with
Yeah.
da-da-da-da, okay.
And at that point, Kyle Schumacher with the Forest Service, I know Nate and I've talked, and Mike and I've talked as well. Some of that would depend on our engineering crew and what they see that use for, and probably working with the county as well. The other thing that you brought up, Nathan, is basically a road agreement between their continuing the county road on the other side of it. And we do agreements, we probably actually have some with Weston County for maintaining roads back and forth, where we maintain part of county roads and county maintains part of our roads as they go through us back to county. So that's another possibility in addition to what Rubina was mentioning as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's a county road out to, with family ranches out in the southwest part of the county, and there's a county road that goes through Forest Service road. It's just a bleeded path. It's nothing more than that. It's just a dry weather only road. That was part of my thought process, if that would be an issue, but.
And then our other concern, I think, with this section is that last year someone went through and bladed a portion of the road and also went on Forest Service without permission. And they knocked down trees, and there was no cultural resources survey done before that occurred. Okay. So that would be also an issue that we would like to have addressed.
Okay.
Going forward.
Thank you. So Michael, tell us where we are in this process.
I mean, I think Nathan has it pretty well narrowed down. We need to get that viewer done. I'd like to see what exactly those standards are if they're on the easement, if that's the route you guys were going. I don't know which way you guys are leaning on that. The easement seems more practical to me than a 20-year permit. So.
Go ahead.
Mine's more a little bit of confusion, so maybe the other commissioners can help me understand it. So if they have access to the road and they can get a letter from the bank or from you guys for the bank, what would be the purpose of doing this then? I mean, is there more to it than I understand? Or
I think I can address that.
okay,
You got, if you look at the map here, Mr. Stockmaster's right here at the edge of the property.
Okay.
However, you've got this landowner, Kissack's back in here, who would like access, which I think Mr. Stockmaster's, did you give them access through you?
Yes, they got an easement before I bought mine.
To potentially build here, Mullins family, is that you folks?
Yes.
They're right up here, which, they're in Crick County, but they're doing business in Upton. I mean, it's not, we're not building road into Crick County.
And Milky and Kevin were pretty much all here.
Yeah, so does it behoove the county to take this project on to benefit the county basically by having people, landowners up there having the ability to access their properties and potentially build or whatever?
so the problem isn't here, it's getting to here, off of here.
Yeah, in this section here, I think between Mr. Stockmaster and everybody that's involved here is the section that's not through that Forest Service that is already.
Our problem, sir, is, I called and my son and I went over to Mrs. Green's house about coming in on the old Hall Road, and they both denied me buying access. So that's the only way I can get in. And the Hall Road's been there over 50 years, and that's my address. How can they do that?
Right.
You know, and that's the only way we got of getting in there is on this other way. And like I said, I've been overseas for 22 years, and I come home and everything's changed so much. And everybody's being denying, I'm trying to build another house.
Yeah.
Let me ask a question, if I may.
Mhm.
So, Michael, if you have if it's on your deed that you have all easements prior, isn't that the ability they could go get that beyond the whole road? I'm just curious.
If it runs with the land, yeah. If there's an easement recorded that runs with the land, yeah.
Okay, but if they don't, it's private. then they
Well,
don't.
Mary Barton gave us easement way back when,
Okay.
but the lawyer that Merritt had never recorded it with the state, or the assessor's office in Sundance. And my mother paid $1 to Merritt and they told us to build a road from our property to the Hall Road, and our address is Wagner Road. But
So
we're
there's
being
other
denied
issues.
access,
Other issues then.
and that's the only way we can get in is off of Barton Road.
Okay, is there an ability for us to be able to find what those standards would be for that?
Yes, I can email them the engineering standards at the different levels of roads the Forest Service has. And whatever, if Mr. Stockmaster decides he needs a permit, then he would just send me a 299 application. I've already sent him one, and I believe I sent one to you. If the county decides they would like an easement, I would need the 299 from the county and the notes of the meeting where you agree that you want to move forward with this as a county road easement.
Okay, so here's another question that I have. Maybe Michael, you can help me. So we have MOUs with a couple of the roads. Do we have easements with those MOUs?
I don't think so.
I got a question. Way back when we put power out there, we had easement for the power. That's where the road goes, right down the power line. Is that different?
It is different.
Okay.
The power line's 20-foot wide.
Yeah, no,
So,
but-
and if we do have MOUs with other counties, and I'm sure with this county, that if you wanna take over maintenance but not do an easement, then we could do an agreement that way as well.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to clarify, because I believe that we have some of those issues too, so.
Is there any way we can take over an easement without any maintenance? I think that's where we.
No.
I don't mind doing the maintenance. I don't even.
I think we're just
need
trying
a
to,
road.
we're trying to discover all our options, so go ahead and then, either way.
So the next step in this process would be appoint a viewer, and then we have to have a public hearing, right?
Correct.
And before we can even move forward with any of that stuff, probably, right?
But the idea is that we have the knowledge before, that we have the information before we get to that stage. The only way to answer questions is if you have the answers.
Yeah.
So, or have attempted to have the answers. So I think it's only
To me, if it was one landowner up here, it's a different story. When you got multiple families looking, it's a different deal.
go ahead.
So, I guess, and this probably ought to be a decision we make or in that viewer's report, but, you know, I think, like, you guys just built a road on your east side, right?
Correct, yeah.
Up there, and then it goes up to maybe,
It goes up to the
County
county
line,
line,
to the
yeah.
county line.
Before we get into our property.
Cause we have no other way to get in there, so it's like.
But there's, right, then there's, I'm trying to remember, is there a road right on that county line?
Yeah, well, it goes.
Or it kinda kitty corners through there?
Crosses the county line, goes down Lincoln's property.
Yeah, we put a road, yeah, we
One at
built
a
a
time,
road,
please.
we put a road in between, like Dan was saying, we put a
And
road.
then there's a trail crosses natural grass line again, just a trail.
I mean, you look at this and there's 30 landowners that are landlocked with probably not a whole lot of easements. I don't know.
Well, we're having.
You know, like
problems
if we,
with the
hold on just a second, we're gonna have to get a little bit of order in this
Yes,
meeting if
exactly.
we can. I'm sorry. You know, say we have a viewer come out and run a county road straight north to the county line. I mean, really, the only landowners that affects is Michael Stockmaster, Danny Hart, Daniel Hart. and Larry Rasmussen. You know, and then unless there's an easement recorded on that county line that'd give access clear across there, you know, Milky's probably still cut off. Dave Bullock's cut off. You guys are still cut off. So, you know, whether those are, and I'm guessing that my family is probably to blame for this at some point, selling a lot of these off without, you know, I don't know if there's legal easements or not, but it was, you know, they just sold 40s, and it was, I think, the old handshake, yeah, come through there and that'll work. And I don't know that for sure, but that would be my guess. Is they're just, you know, if you guys don't have recorded easements through some of these other people, you don't have legal access.
Your dad did, but they didn't file it.
Yeah.
Or your grandfather.
You were going to say something, go ahead. You were going to say something, what were you going to say?
Why was I gonna say something?
You were.
I built that road in there for your grandpa 40 years ago. It's built all up nice. And then they had access down the Hall Road, so they never used it. The trees grew up on it. Culverts got plugged. But I done it one time, long time ago.
And it was a different time back then. You know, you just had an agreement with.
Yeah, and we
Shook hands.
went back in there by the fence. Well, when they surveyed it, that fence that runs north and south is off. And now they got the power line in there, and the power line, it's off for a long ways. It goes to the Forest Service. To the Forest Service, and another section, another quarter mile, and then they jump back over and go down the line. They got part of it straight and part of it's crooked. And the part that's crooked, most of it's on Forest Service, and they got land on both sides, so it really doesn't make much difference where you put it, it's still on Forest Service.
Thank you for that. Go ahead.
What do we need to do to get your report
We just-
started?
We have to move to get a viewer. We have to decide who the viewer will be, so we can have that
And that
conversation.
has to be somebody that's, this doesn't affect,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. This doesn't affect.
I'll move to appoint Jimmy Hansen as a viewer. Is that all right, Jim?
Let me ask the attorney, are you okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded to appoint Jimmy Hansen as a viewer on the Barton Road, extension. Is there any other discussion? Go ahead.
Who administers the oath to this viewer? Said viewer, the chairman?
What are we going to?
Huh?
What are we going to?
And then, I can visit with you, Jimmy, but there's a couple other things that you have to do. I think you probably worked with Rick or been a part of that before. Oh,
Okay, is there any other discussion?
Yeah, I guess one other thing I wanted to add to your question, Mr. Taylor, as far as the ability to go and get the mortgage from the bank and that sort of thing. And we went through the process basically this time last year, and because we didn't have the legal recorded access, even though the Forest Service, stated that we have no issues, it's public access, no permit required, that was not good enough. And since then, we actually reached out to a couple other banks, and they actually were reaching out to different title companies to see if it made a difference. And the Forest Service provided us a different letter, more specific even, and we shared that, and that wasn't good enough for any of them right now. So I don't know if times are changing, but that's the struggle we've been dealing with.
Yeah, and we've never had that issue before. This is the first time that's popped up, because we get that request a few times a year, and it's never been an issue, so.
And we are happy
Yeah.
to issue a permit for use on that section if that is what is required.
Thank you.
and that's an annual use permit, is that
Yes.
right? I wonder if that's the
You should-
concern is, you got a
They're
30-year mortgage and you got an annual use
They, road use permits are 20 years,
permit. 20 years, okay.
Yeah. Renewable. So they're long term. Any other questions? Any other discussion? Okay, go ahead.
I guess, what's the board's intent? Are we just gonna survey this north to the county line? Is that our?
I think we have to.
Whatever's needed.
Yeah, I think we have to. Joe?
I just want to thank you guys for coming. I appreciate you coming out and helping try to solve some of this. And I think we need to work on our deal a little bit too, to to get a better understanding for future boards if they run into these issues.
Can I say something else about that? One of the things I'd like to see this road for too is if there's ever a forest fire up there, you gotta have a north or a south exit. That's a pretty big chunk of fire ground in there, and this would give you a pretty good exit for all of the people that live up in that area, to the south anyway. And I think that's a consideration that you guys should take into account.
Thank you for that. You ready for the question? Okay. All those in favor of appointing Jimmy Hansen as the viewer for the Martin Road, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Motion is carried. I'll give you the oath later, okay? Okay, well, thank you very much for attending. We'll keep you in the loop.
I want to thank you guys. For putting dust control on it.
Thank you for making the trip.
Yeah.
And go to.
Okay,
the assessor.
Okay. And let us know if you'd like to come back.
Okay, thank you very much.
As long as we don't change the property.
But you got your exemption. Okay, good. Good enough.
You know that, Marty? Does that increase their property, their valuation, right?
Yes, that's a fixed asset. You still have to have a viewer.
What? Is a viewer like a surveyor?
Pardon me, I'm sorry.
Is a viewer like a surveyor?
No, a viewer is a person that goes and looks at the road to see if it has justification to be there. And so they write a report whether or not,
Cost estimate is part of that, is why I.
right, it would behoove
I
the
could
county
see
to
that.
have, so if you were going to have a viewer just to go look at a county road that was going to one house, you would send that viewer out, and that viewer would have an opinion that the board certainly can override. But the idea is to get a viewer's opinion of is that feasible for them. And it's part of state law.
I can see why.
Yeah, because you can, once you start affecting landowners by pushing roads and that they may not want.
I don't think that's what we got going
No.
on here.
Well, you still have to give the public a view of what.
Yeah.
I've got tough doesn't have Yeah, I got plenty of stuff. Yeah.
Just so y'all know, I'm just letting it run. I'm not going to split it again. I'll do that at lunch. So keep your clothes on.
I'll try. Still bring the tea.
Walter. Okay, go ahead and bring them all in if they're. Are you two it?
Don's here.
You're gonna be part of this, aren't you? Are you gonna be part of this? Step on up, bud.
Somewhat.
Come on in. Come up to the S board.
Well, almost.
Eric, you're gonna be on this board here one of these days.
No, I don't think so. In this discussion,
Doing well.
Just live in a groove.
Before the meeting and email them to us.
Well, that's what we only have one copy, and we went to the city council
Hi, how are you?
and,
Good.
and they didn't sign it. They wanted to table it and look at it, so I had to come up with another copy, so that's, but yeah, we will definitely do that.
well, we'll have it sent to, we'll send it.
Thank you, sir. I'll do that.
So are you expecting any others, just?
I think that's it, yep.
Okay, Tuck, you're up. If you would state your name and your position for the Zoom that we're doing with.
Okay, Jeff Streeter, airport manager. We're here to discuss the airport hangar construction project. And our spokesman for the group is Don Cooksey, chairman of the airport board. So with that, I'll pass it to him.
Okay, floor is yours.
To tell the tale, some 3 or 4 years ago, we all started a project at the Newcastle airport to address the hangar shortage.
So who's we, your board?
Our board, you folks, and the city council.
Fair enough.
And so about 2 years ago, half the project was completed. That half is the taxiways that provide access to the hangars to be constructed. That's about half the economic impact of the project. And now we're at a place in time where we can solicit funding to finish the project, which would be actually build the hangar buildings. And to get that started, what we need from y'all is to sign a task order, which basically asks the engineer, task order to the engineer group, to start the engineering work, which also includes the grant process. So that takes your signature, and it'll take, I forget, just under $2,000, roughly $1,900 from you all and from the city, which is a 2% match for the engineering costs. So that's what we need to get going today. I think it's probably important to point out that when the entire project is completed on the hangars, somewhere in the neighborhood of no more than $945,000 will have been spent. And then from that costs the city and the county 2%.
Any questions? Go ahead.
Sorry, because I'm not real familiar with this. Some of this must have been done before I became a board member, but can you give me a scope of the project by chance? Like what's this gonna do?
It's going to provide hangar spaces.
So it's for building hangars? Or,
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
The whole project started in 2019 with the
remember that
taxiway
part,
extension. That was a little over $745,000 that funded. You guys had 2%, the city funded that. This is now the second step of that. We've got the taxiways in. Now there's federal funds and state funds available to cover all but $20,000.
2%.
2% for the total area. So 2% for each area of $945,000. But this funding, this task sheet is for $98,000, just to get the engineers to get their bids out, what's available for materials, for suppliers, for contractors, and that. That comes off the total amount.
So you don't even know what this can build yet?
That's right. And the way with things are, it could be as low as 3, it could be as many as 7 hangars, but we don't know until we
get the engineering department to say, okay, what can you get with this money? Now, they're also doing the grants and that for the federal government and the state, so we don't have to get our fingers in that.
In that regard, it might not turn out to be.
It could be less.
It could be less.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just the maximum allowable money that we have available from is the 945 with the state and federal match.
If you look at that sheet, the one column on the left there, the 700,000, that was money that the state and the federal government granted to, okay, this is about what we think you could spend on it. The 245,000 has funds that have just come available in the last year from the federal government on the FAA's improvement projects that they have the money available now, COVID and everything else. This is, and some projects were put on hold that weren't done. So that's why the two figures are there. The 245 is new funds available to us.
Go ahead.
So, several questions. Will this replace some of those, are some of those other hangars gonna get tore down, or is this gonna be in addition to it? Who's gonna own those and who will generate the revenues from those hangars, and what size or class of planes can we put in this hangar?
Don't consider it replacement. Consider it an addition. These hangars will belong to the airport authority, whether that's you or us, whoever the airport authority is. There are some older hangars out there that we expect to see.
Some of those had to be torn down because of the state requirements. So that's why we're doing it.
One of them already had. We just finished it here about 3 years ago.
As for the money, any rental money would come back into the county coffers. If that answers your question.
Yeah, I'm surprised it doesn't get split with the city.
Yeah.
It would,
Well,
okay, yeah.
yeah.
Or they'd stay in your guys' revenue account or your expense account, or that.
Well, it would, I believe it would come back to the county.
Size of, I mean, is this just for little 2-4-seater planes, or are you gonna be able to put a jet in there, or?
They'll be for, majority will be single engine and small twin engine. We'll have to work the size of those, but there's certainly gonna be no big jet.
I didn't know if you had some, there isn't any place for one of those big planes to come in and out of the weather, right? A bigger plane.
Not that we can provide access to. There is two private hangars that will accommodate a jet, and if the owners are willing to rent them out, which they have been in the past, we can stick them in there, but it's nothing as far as the airport is concerned.
Correct me if I'm wrong, I think part of this feasibility study that we're looking at now are the engineering task force. The engineers are gonna look and see what size of hangars we could get and we could use. We'll have input in that to think if we do need a bigger hangar or a larger plane, that would be part of the cost structure. Say, okay, we might have 3 of this and 1 of these, or some combination thereof. It's not locked inside what it's gonna be, it's just say, okay, they're gonna let us know what's out there, what we get for our money.
And will that be based on, I'm just a layman here, so based on the traffic that you have occurred or potential traffic that you may have?
Yeah, I've got some, the Wyoming Aviation Administration in 2020 released a survey of all airports in Wyoming, possible generation of revenue, what they generate for taxes, usage and that. And on Mondale Field, again, this data is some years old, but they think they came up with annual state and local aviation tax revenue for Mondale Field alone was over $38,000. Okay. The entities that used Mondale Field were Weston County Health Services, Flight for Life. We've got the aerial firefighting, Forest Service, Game and Fish, the several banks,
the Pinnacle Bank flies into that. We also have some landowners, absentee landowners in this county that fly twin jets into here and spend from 1 to 5 days looking at the property. So it amazed me when I realized how much that is.
That big jet that one fellow or family owns, is there anywhere for that thing to fit?
The, Mr. Thayer's up here, they have the Challenger won't fit anywhere. No, but they're just come from Aberdeen, normally they plan that to be able to go back.
Oh.
Another gentleman uses net jets, and they do overnight, if they come in with one of their smaller ones, and if there's either one of the two private owners of the larger hangars available, the smaller net jet one will fit in. But like I said, they're privately owned, it's up to them. They're normally, have been real good about letting people use it.
We have had other individuals in the county express an interest that if we had additional hangars, they would be interested in possibly renting them on a yearly basis.
Yeah, we've got 3 people right now that are basically sure bets. I mean, if they say, it's still, we're looking at a forecast of mid to late summer for construction, so something could change between now and then between these individuals. But right now, they've said they're really interested in, and that's just the 3 that are. I've had plenty of phone calls from those people that have expressed interest in it. So the interest is there, and the one thing is around the hills, around this area, there just isn't any hangar space. I mean, you can go to Rapids, Roulette, Spearfish, Custer doesn't, Hot Springs, Sturgis, they're all full. There's nobody who has any hangar space there. So that's where I'm getting a lot of the calls from people out there and wanting hangar space also. So that's.
That raises another question. Is this be something that, I mean, I guess there probably would be a plan, we can just keep stacking hangars onto this deal? And so you get this thing built up and it's full and it's generating revenue, and say, hey, let's throw 3 more hangars on this deal.
Yeah, they're designed that way.
Okay.
And then also on we designed where the 2 taxiways are. Also on the north side, the highway side of the one taxiway, there's also room for private individuals to build hangar, or we could build more on that side also, but we can extend out from where we're at now with the T-hangar type construction.
Any other questions? Can you just give us a general idea why the city put it on hold?
They hadn't read it. I gave them a copy earlier. I meant to have the engineers send you guys a copy. And I thought, well, I'll bring the other one up. And anyway, but they hadn't read it. So.
I think there's only one council member that had remembered from 2019 the extension project. So we had 6, 7 people in there that hadn't seen it.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Fair enough. Okay, I just was curious if there was any other than that. Okay, what's the pleasure of the board?
Move to enter into an agreement or chairman's signature.
Before you do that, Phil, are you just looking for you just need the approval for the engineering aspect?
Yeah. Yeah, just for that $98,075, 2% of that. And when we get, hopefully we'll get that by July. That's kind of what the people sheet that have it for us. Then we'll have a better idea. Then we could come in and say, okay, that's gonna equate to 5 T-hangars at this cost, and have a better breakdown of that.
Okay.
That also comes off the 945,000.
Now, you're talking this 2% now. I'm understanding that the city is 1% and so it's a 4% match. 4% match, okay. So this would be 2 and 2. Okay. Thank you.
Ready for a motion?
I'd move to authorize the chairman's signature on the approval and acceptance of task order number 3 for the design of the hangars.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to authorize the chairman's signature on the, came up with a good title. Oh, I gave mine.
Task order number 3.
Approval and
Authorize the
acceptance.
chairman's signature on approval and acceptance on task order 3 of the design of hangars.
Everybody understand the motion? Okay, is there any other discussion? Who's having it?
Can I see that real quick?
I second it.
There is also attached, or with that, the scope of work, which kind of breaks that down a little more into what the engineer's job is.
And then once the engineer does this, then they're gonna apply for a grant to pay for the rest, correct?
The grant basically already approved. These are what the steps.
It's officially, they have allocated the money. We still have to.
But you guys don't have the grant yet, you don't have
No,
it in
We
our
don't have
office
it because of this.
You have to have this first. Go ahead.
On the share amount, that's the total amount for the city and the county share, it says. What is that?
If they approve.
If they
Which-
approve the grant?
The whole program.
The whole
Oh,
hangar.
Yeah,
and the
the
design.
total amount, yeah.
And there again, we got our fingers crossed it comes in less.
Right.
Any other discussion? Okay, are you ready for the questions? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. Motion is passed.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your work on the board too.
So are we, do we have this for the signature? Do we have the form?
It should be on the back page.
This one.
This one, okay.
So, yeah, yours is.
And then
Right here.
We'll
just her,
copy of that.
I'll have to make a copy.
I can stop by and make that up. Thank you very much.
Thank you. This doesn't come
Okay,
over.
see you.
Will you hand me the phone cord, please?
Oh, this is what explains to us about the money coming in and how to be spent.
Do you have Jeremiah's number?
I do.
The next item on the agenda, what does the ARPA stand for?
American Association of Retired.
No,
No,
the American Recovery.
American Rescue Plan.
Thank you, rescue plan. Yeah, there we go.
Thank you.
Oh, Mayor Crandall over there getting us lined out.
Mayor-elect.
Mayor-elect.
Thanks, Nick.
Good morning, this is Jeremiah.
Good morning, Jeremiah, it's Becky.
Hey, good morning, how are you doing?
Good, how are you?
Thank you, I'm doing well.
Good, hey, I have you on speaker, okay?
Great.
Good morning, Jeremiah. This is Marty.
Hey, good morning, Commissioner, how are you?
You know, I'm living the dream. Hey, we have a question here concerning the ARPA Local Assistance and Tribal Fund explanation. The floor is yours.
Well, appreciate the opportunity to discuss it. Happy to talk about the Local Assistance and Tribal Consistency Fund and also answer any questions that you might have relative to the ARPA State and Local Fiscal Recovery Fund. But quickly, as it relates to those local assistance funds, as you now know, you have been allocated funding from the federal government. That funding was largely defines the ability to use them for any traditional governmental purpose. There is one exclusion. You cannot use the funds for lobbying purposes. That's the one exclusion. There is no time frame by which you have to use the funds, but the longer you hold on to those funds, the more you have to report. So if you want to hold on to them for several decades, you're going to be reporting for several decades. If you wanted to use them in the nearer term, then you may only have to report on them once. So that's your choice as you want to go about this. But those are the two major points about this particular fund. As I understand it, you all have applied for the first round of funding, which is positive because you had until January 31st of 2023 in order to apply for that funding, or you would miss out on both payments of this money. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, but hopefully that provides some explanation.
Go ahead.
Jeremiah, it's Commissioner Taylor. How are you?
I'm great, thanks, Commissioner.
As you recall, I called because I was confused about, we had different stories and different things that were out there. But on the lost, I was hoping that you could explain we are able to invest, but you had brought up the suggestion of the lost revenue and how we would handle that. If you could go into some detail with that, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, happy to do that. Lost revenue really comes into place under the ARPA State and Local Fiscal Recovery Fund. So that's the other set of funding that you've received as direct payment. Under that fund, counties have a couple of options. You can utilize that funding under the traditional program rules, which do have some limitations associated with them. The other option with that fund is that the U.S. Treasury provided a $10 million allowance for local governments as well as state governments to claim lost revenue. Now you may ask why $10 million? We may not have had that sort of level of lost revenue. In fact, maybe we had positive revenue sources. Let me just give you a brief background on why they provided that allowance. The U.S. Treasury typically only deals with the 50 states and the U.S. territories. They're not used to working with local government entities. So again, traditionally they've got 50 checks that they might be writing. Under ARPA, things really changed for the federal government because now they were cutting checks to counties, and there are over 3,000 counties across the country, and so now the Treasury was going to have to deal with them, and there are untold numbers more of municipalities that were also receiving funding. So the U.S. Treasury really had to figure out a more effective way for them to understand what lost revenue might look like, and also reduce some administrative burdens, reduce administrative burden on local entities that were ultimately going to have to report, as well as reduce their own administrative burden of having tens of thousands of reports coming into them when they're used to, again, only 50 reports. And so they went through a complicated process to figure out what the average lost revenue was and came up with the $10 million allowance. Now, I know you all didn't receive that much money, but what it means is that the entirety of your allowance under that ARPA State and Local Fiscal Recovery Fund can be claimed as lost revenue. return to be used however you like. They become your own general fund revenue. You don't have to use them as you would under ARPA. But you do have to ultimately expend those funds, or at least have the expenditures allocated by December 31st of 2024 and have the funds expended by December 31st of 2026. So a couple of things that I might just quickly mention. First off, if you don't take the lost revenue allowance, you're going to break my heart. You're going to break my heart because you're going to make your administrative burden that much more hard, because you're going to have to report on these things quite regularly. Unlike the lost revenue calculation, you can take that and fairly quickly relieve your administrative burden. And number two, by not taking that lost revenue approach, you're ultimately going to, sorry, I lost my train of thought. You're ultimately going to have further restrictions on the funds, unlike what you can do with lost revenue, where you can use it for any traditional governmental purpose. The other thing that is important relative to those funds is I really would encourage you to, ultimately if your plan is to try and build some investment savings, I would really expend the federal funds on perhaps a project that you already have in the queue. I don't know what that project might be. I know you're working on your dispatch center. Maybe it's enough to cover that. And then you can take your general fund that was alleviated from that responsibility and put that into investments. And then you're not bound as much to the time requirements that you would if you put those ARPA funds into a savings account, because again, you can only gain the interest so long as they're in there, and they can only be in there until December 31st of 2024, by which time you either have to expend them or you're going to have to return them. I hope that makes sense. Happy again to answer any questions.
Jeremiah, Nathan, Todd, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing well, Commissioner.
Good. So if I'm understanding this correctly, we don't have to claim that as lost revenue prior to investment. Is that correct?
You don't,
Okay.
But I would encourage you to.
Yeah. Okay. So we've already got it kind of locked up into some CDs. So we need to figure that out.
Hey, Commissioner, are those CDs expiring before December 31st?
They do. One is November 24, and the others are, one is 23, and the other is May or April 24. So
yeah. So if I can just quickly respond to that, you're making your timeline for expenditure rather short if you ultimately intend to utilize those for some other purpose, capital project or whatever you're wanting to do. And that's where I think my recommendation of swapping those out, just using those funds for the governmental purpose that you intend to now, and then just put your general funds into those CDs, if that makes sense.
Yep. Do some funny financing. We just change color money.
So Jeremiah, this is Marty again.
Yeah.
So is that part of the reporting process, since we've already put them in as CDs? In the reporting process, do we say that we cash those CDs and use it on XYZ project, and then we go and backfill with general funds? Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, obviously I'm not going to understand the exact mechanics that you're going to have to walk through here, but it obviously is trying to get those federal funds out of the account and expending them and replacing those with your general funds that were alleviated from the responsibility that they otherwise would have had because of the federal funds.
So there has to be a paper trail somehow.
you are gonna have to make some sort of a transfer there, yeah.
Go ahead.
So we can't just change color money potentially and say we're spending, say it's $700,000 of our ARPA funds and leave that CD in place.
Yeah, commissioners, you may be able to do that at the local level and ultimately show the paper trail really is that the CD is funded with the general funds that you otherwise saved, and that you then extended the federal funds on the particular project, and that's what you're ultimately gonna report to the Fed.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Any other questions?
I don't know, so I think I've got the process figured out in my head.
Susie, do you have any questions? Go ahead.
Hey Jeremiah, this is Susie, the Weston County Treasurer.
Yeah.
I have a question, but now I lost my train of thought.
Seems to be a common thing.
Right.
Okay, no, I don't have, I do have a question, but I can't remember it.
Well, I'm always available. Feel free to email me or give me a call.
Okay.
Any other questions? Well, thank you, Jeremiah. We certainly appreciate you cleared up a couple things for us.
All right. Well, again, if anything comes up in the meantime, feel free to reach out. Happy to help on this.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You be careful skiing this winter.
See you later. Tony said to be careful skiing this winter.
That's sage advice. I appreciate it.
Okay, see you later.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Okay, we're running 2 minutes. Any discussion on that? Did you, I mean, he was a person. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I think you probably can do a lot of this with just a big budget amendment and figure it out where you transfer all this money into those budget line items and then transfer those budget line items out to a CD. You know, I don't know that you necessarily have to pull that CD.
Yeah, don't even
It just has to be a paper trail.
Yeah.
Well, do you understand it?
But aren't the funds already allotted to the ARPA? Don't we have line items for ARPA? That we do, you bet.
Well, we have accounts, but you're showing that they're in CDs.
And you guys are spending it. Well, I only have half of the first half. Half of the first thing we got.
Tranche.
And you guys spent half of that on the radios. So there's $383,425.87 left to spend on the first part one of it. So then we got the next $676,114.53 in. Nothing's been spent out of that.
We have it in a budget, in an account.
Well, the idea is that we would spend it. That's why.
And you're not,
So you'll just
nobody's
have to remember.
spending anything right now.
The tribal's under the other one?
And the tribal one is down under,
248?
Yeah,
that's invested also.
we have both the tribal and the American Rescue Plan. These are all in accounts.
Which is okay.
Yeah,
That's-
we just
I mean,
do
we
an
just,
amendment.
Yeah,
We just
I'm
do
the
amendments
real
to
one,
move that.
there's a big one.
to spend them. I mean, we have to.
I mean, I watch when you spend them, and then if you get to spending too much of it, I'll hold the CD and use it on that.
So one of our challenges, you know, like ideally it'd be on a big project where, you know, we can use a little bit of it on that dispatch and we could possibly use some of it on that elevator project. But a lot of our big projects are county road fund dollars and we don't want to start replacing that. So I think you just go in and, you know, replace everything with salaries or something in several different offices with this money and then transfer back out.
Something for the board to keep in mind is Gilbert, we did apply for that radio grant, which is also part of ARPA money. And they have it on hold to figure out disbursement because more money was requested than that was in there. They're trying to figure out how and how much everybody's gonna get. So that'll be another portion of that that's still considered ARPA money, but we have to.
Go ahead.
Is that going to be Homeland's ARPA, or is it going to be the general fund ARPA?
And that,
Because Homeland has his own ARPA.
that I'm not sure of.
Okay.
But I do know it's considered ARPA money because I should have brought that question up, but that's another one to consider.
Because I know
He got some.
has his own. Yeah, he's
He
had
got
his own.
some.
Yeah, already.
See, this is the tangled web that you end up, spinning here. This is where this gets a little, and that's why I'm saying it's so much of a paper trail, because when you have to come to a point where you have to explain what you did, there better be a pretty good paper trail. That's why there's such a fuss with so much of this. But the thing we also have to remember is we had a list of projects that we were after too. And so that needs to be either brought into this subject and listed so we know and encumber such, so that we can keep that going and that doesn't become, and then you can backfill with the general fund. So, I mean, this is gonna take some tracking. Did you have something?
I think potentially as soon as this Upton one comes to fruition in 10 months, there's $500,000 sitting right there that we take as revenue replacement. And that's all they need to know, right?
The way I understood it is if, you designate it as revenue replacement, you don't have to touch that, you just designate it as revenue replacement.
And that 500,000 just changes color with
The name changes.
Yeah, part of that bigger CD. And
It's like a movie set that we're
This
sitting
stuff,
from.
these funds have to be spent on goods and services. And then you can take the money that you would have normally spent on those goods and services and invest that. But you have to show that paper trail.
That's what I'm saying, so I think you have to be very steadfast in doing such. Because that would be, I mean, it's a tangled web if it doesn't get that.
I think part of that, you don't have, if you take it as revenue replacement, as long as you're under $10 million, there is no reporting.
But I think there's a difference. See, that's where this gets a little hairy.
You know who's pretty good on this is Kelly.
Yeah.
Should be good to visit with about it.
Just know that you spent what you were required to spend before the 24th.
And Paul, our auditor, said we needed to do the revenue, or the
Replacement.
revenue replacement too.
Which only makes sense.
He said he was surprised that we hadn't done it
The
right away.
administrative tracking is huge.
Yeah, I think you could just do it. You could do it right now, potentially, and it's done.
Yep.
When your auditor's telling you to do it, I mean.
Just a thought, maybe Becky can work with Susie and Kelly and Jeremiah and just figure out the best way to do that and look at some different things that we can put this into our budget and then transfer some of those out and make a paper trail for us, maybe for consideration at the next meeting. That's something that'd be interesting.
I think a list of encumbered, so we have some way to track it, would be the best for us.
Good.
Okay, anything else?
Then that new savings plot we would know is still from ARPA in our minds. And that would be for capital projects.
Yeah, could we create a line item that
I think we have one.
it's there already?
We just gotta get the paper trail to get it there.
Yeah.
We just have to document it all. All right, anything else?
I'm kind of confused on what you're talking about. You're wanting to.
I think that paper trail can just be, we're allocating this funds to revenue replacement, and that's it. As long as we're under
You
that.
guys just have to say something
Yeah.
in this meeting.
Yeah.
So, but I think what we have to do is make it clear to you that as this one glass gets emptied, this glass gets full. And so there's not still this other glass over here still full of money that we're spending. We're trying to equal those.
I'm trying to spend this money.
But with the understanding that it has been spent and has been backfilled, the general fund has been backfilled.
So, like for example, this right here is,
Oh my gosh, we just saw.
this is the fairgrounds budget that we give them quarterly.
Okay.
This is the ARPA funds. We put that in there, we take that out.
$2.
Hey, we got money.
I got $2.
And we have a paper trail that says, we got
But
receipts that says
did
we
you see
did
what he
that.
was saying? It's still, all he changed was the serial number on the bill.
Keep it.
You're not pulling.
Buy yourself a candy bar.
But what we weren't doing, what we're trying not to do is you spend this one out of this, and then you double spend it over here.
Just pretty easy, I think.
It's pretty easy to, I think we could do it, but it has to be,
Rob Peter to pay.
Yeah.
We do that all the time.
but this has to be very well documented.
Now, when are these reports, whenever they do, how do we do them? I think
Must
that was
have
my
to do
question
online.
for Jeremiah.
Oh, good job.
That was my question, yeah.
I think those
I'll talk to Paul. I'll email Paul, and he'll know when the reports are due.
Cause see, I haven't seen anything coming through the emails at all on this. Other than,
They were probably due last week.
oh shit.
Did somebody file anything on
Probably went to your spam.
the first money we allocated for radios? Did anybody file a report on that one?
Not yet.
That's probably due by January.
So, yeah, so I haven't seen anything, but
That'd be a good question for you to ask. Email Jeremiah and say, when are these due?
Mm-hmm.
and how do you do it?
I'll
I
visit
mean,
with
where do you
Kelly
go to do it?
about it.
Okay. So
To me, she made it very clear to me one day when I was talking to her, it's just take it as revenue replacement and that's it, and you're done with it.
And then you don't have to report on anything again, ever.
okay.
That's
So we
the
have to do it
upside.
and
You guys have to decide, well, we're gonna put all this money into a revenue replacement. But then what do I do with it? I turn
That's
around
where
and
we start
reinvest it?
to, that's where we start to change the color of money.
Yeah.
And
I'm not
it's-
so sure you can just leave it in that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
I
probably
wouldn't
could.
touch
So
it.
just keep reporting.
Take the name ARPA off of it.
Yeah. Cause I do have them in the general fund.
Yeah.
They are in the general fund, but they're labeled ARPA.
Get some information.
That would-
We'll have this ready.
Got it.
All right, we will break for lunch and we will be back here at 1 o'clock. Session 1 o'clock. Hello, Fairgrounds. Come on up. It's your turn.
Yeah, in the hot seat.
Okay, just a reminder, cause you forget.
Will you put your name? Oh, do we have this going? For the tape, will you just state your name for the tape and for the videotape?
I'm Linda Hunt, Nancy Darnell, for the Friends of the Fair and the other organizations we belong to.
Thank you. Okay.
We are here to remind the commissioners about the former donation on March 1st, 2022. Okay, it was when we took you to the tour to the fairgrounds and discussed what needed to be done, and there was several things there, the flying fingers and the historic and all that kind of stuff that we talked about, not from one end to the other. Then we came back after the break, and the board added the fairgrounds proposal to the recovery funds list. You have a copy of this, you already know I'm gonna say this. And Commissioner Wagner moved to authorize the Friends of the Fair to build a crow's nest and mobile crow's nest, and this is seconded by Commissioner Taylor. That also included, the pens and that sort of stuff that we're gonna do. So you have been given a sheet to remind you how much your share was. Right down here, this part that we proposed. That was, you were matching what Friends of the Fair were gonna put into it. And, we aren't quite finished with the project yet. We still have to do the, pens add-on and the, portable crow's nest, which no doubt Nancy's already kind of roughly figured it and checked it out. Due to inflation, that's gone up to about $2,000 more. So, but anyways, I want to show you the 2 sheets that I just added on top of your desk a few minutes ago. This, first sheet shows you the costs and to who to that we've already paid, of the stationary crow's nest and the 2 catwalks. So the monies that, down here on all the graphics and that, some of the monies that came from that were, we sold the 7 advertisement for the 7 signs above the bucking chutes at $2,500 each for 5 years. So that was $17,500. So then we had to have Wilder Graphics make those signs. And Curtis put them up, so that's what those 2 additional costs are down there. So that's what we've spent so far on this project that we spoke to you about earlier, is the $34,000. And just so that you have an idea, that's what you're familiar with, we also, just for your information, we put up the 2 new entry signs. That's the other page. And that was the cost on the entry signs, and who made them who finished installing and that sort of thing, so that's 15,800. So Friends of the Fair have in this past year put $50,569.41 into these projects. We didn't ask you for the signs in here, that's just for your information, for what we put into that. And I did get some from the application for that one. Okay, so that tells you on that sheet how much came from the travel commission and then there was a donation. So anyways, just so you know what we do for money and why we need your help to finish. We need to stay on that list.
So what are you proposing that we pay for?
Well, yeah, to help us finish it, because we've already went over our half.
Would the 24,580 do that?
Yeah, would you mind adding another 1,000 on it to help us with the inflation costs?
25,580. So, sorry for my smirk the whole time you guys were talking, but I do remember this conversation. And I remember after you walked out, we had a conversation saying, do you think they realized that we authorized them to go ahead and do the work on our building, but not the money behind it?
Yes, we did, that's why we've stopped. That's why we're here, yeah. We wanna make sure we get the rest.
But yes, we managed to raise the funds to continue doing it, and
Any questions from the board?
I make a motion to authorize use of 25,580 on ARPA funds to.
It's been moved and seconded to use the 25, give me an exact figure, please.
25,580.
Just get that. Out of the ARPA funds.
Do we need to designate like the first tranche or doesn't matter?
You decide.
I don't know. They just have to all be used at a certain. I just say start with them.
Did you get that?
This is Nathan authorized 25,580 of ARPA funds to pay for, should I put to pay for the Crow's Nest Improvement Project?
Correct.
Yeah. We called the whole thing that name, yeah.
Okay, any other discussion? What did you say?
I have one really important question. When can we look for the money?
We gotta get this part done. Any other discussion? Do you have one?
No.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Motion has passed.
Thank you.
Now we can go
Thank
look
you.
and see what we have. I would have to believe that you have to fill out a voucher.
Okay.
Explain, put on your voucher exactly what you just gave us. Okay? And it will be the first of the, and submit it before the 24th.
Okay.
It'll be put through the Board of Commissioners.
You just want us to attach this whole packet we gave you guys, that's what you're saying?
Attached so it's
I
understandable.
would do like this,
Yeah, the one.
First
the
page.
one that says Weston County and where you have it highlighted.
Yep.
This one.
This one, yep.
This one.
Yes,
And then
okay.
add the $1,000.
Okay.
Bring the girls in a bag of sweets and they'll help you.
Thank you.
We can
chocolate
you're
or
right.
is it chocolate or caramel that you want?
Would you all of you, I know,
Oh, we two aren't getting anything, so don't even think about us.
would you all, be interested in a tour again around February or March to see all this that's been done, or have you gone out and seen it already?
I've seen it.
I would ask you to offer it to the new board so that they understand, members of the board, offer it to the new members to go out and look around, see what they're looking at.
Okay.
I think most are probably familiar, but still there's some ins and outs of like the event center and, you know, what problems that happened with that. There's a lot of history in that event center.
Yeah.
Sometimes, yeah, and there just needs to be some explanation as to why things are done and what happened. I think a lot of people know the surface story of it, but don't necessarily, and this is gonna be kind of a pun and I don't mean to it, but the below surface stuff.
Right.
I think it would behoove you to go out and just tour around and see what you're looking at.
Okay. Well, thank you for having faith in us.
thanks for what you did out there.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much.
Gals are always a hoot. I enjoy having you come in.
I think the new entry signs are beautiful.
They are.
Yeah, they're amazing, so. Yeah. Well,
We thank you for the support you've been giving us.
Yes.
Thank
And
you
hope
for-
that the next year is also profitable for all of us. Yeah.
That's good use of those funds, I think.
Well, and thank you for making that location, you know, you're doing the best you can to make it
A destination.
a destination. So we appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We'll lead you to more fun things.
This was the highlight of my day.
This is the highlight of the day.
Okay, we have nothing under new business or old business. Does anybody have anything to bring forward under new business or old? Go ahead.
A couple, I don't know, maybe just discussion items, but I asked if Becky would see if we can get Mallow and maybe Caleb
Sounds
Carter
good.
for the next meeting and see how that tree thinning project is
That's
progressing.
appropriate funds too.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I saw Jeannie's email. I was just hoping maybe, because I had been out of touch last week, but to get an update on how the meeting went with her and more from your perspective than the email.
Even if you want.
Absolutely.
You guys want.
Absolutely.
So the general consensus at that meeting was that this is what they want, a more in-depth handbook than this. Problem with it, though, that exists is this handbook won't necessarily work for the road and bridge, but it might work for the clerk's office. So there's gonna have to be some caveats figured out as to maybe some supplemental things, or maybe some removal on which way, who it may or may not apply to. There's some things that, other interesting thing that I'm not sure how I feel about it, but the elected official adoption of county policies elected officials may at their sole discretion adopt this policy in whole or in part for their department. So you might have an elected official decide,
I don't want to do it.
I'm not gonna follow it. So I think that then falls on the board of what kind of teeth we may have to put out there to say, if you're not willing to follow the handbook, then there may be repercussions. And that's something that I think the board's gonna have to figure out what that might be. There's quite a little in here that I think is gonna have to be removed that really doesn't apply. Becky did a pretty good job going over this.
Yep, that's a big one.
There was
Pictures.
two of them that I think we need to discuss as a board. Probably at the next meeting, that is. One of the ones is, we don't really have a county risk manager. So I think, is that something that morphs into an add-on kind of position for somebody that we already have enlisted? We don't have HR, which is also part of that issue. Who's the big ones?
The big one is the family medical leave.
Yeah, FMLA.
By law, it is not paid, and in this handbook, it says that it is paid. Well, you're not gonna be gone for 12 weeks and be paid for that. That's not, every other handbook that the county has ever had, it's not paid, and by law, it's not paid.
And I discussed that with Jean.
So where did she get the idea that it should be paid, or where did that concept come from?
Maybe that's what Camden County's done.
Yes, it is.
And it's a lot of the state does too.
So the other one we need to figure out is, like per diem, or not per diem, the 40-hour work week with non-exempt employees and exempt employees and comp time, and how hours are actually being calculated, because some department heads aren't putting comp time onto workload sheets that they're turning in. There's some issues we need to gravitate to this is a form and you fill it out correctly. If it's not filled out correctly, then, you know, there may be a repercussion of it's not getting paid until it's done correctly or what it is. But there was a little discussion about having a time clock put in to help watch that kind of stuff so that there's not overages or underages.
So I'm gonna interject here if you don't mind.
Mm-hmm.
So I talked to Ted about that at Fulton County Commissioner. You guys know. Sure. And that was brought up by a former clerk with the understanding that what happens, and what I'm referring to is 8 to 4:30. So the understanding was that so often what was happening is that at 4:55, somebody was coming in to get their taxes paid or to buy their license plates. And so the girls were staying till 5:30 closing their books. And so what that former clerk asked is that they close the building down at 4:30 so that the offices could have that half an hour to close their books without public involvement. And so that was the idea, that they were to stay here until then. In speaking with Ted, he said it was brought up that there would be an issue that sometimes people would just leave at 4:30. It would start to be an issue of not staying. And so he said that was brought up, but I'm going to use air quotes, the promise was made it would stay. So I think what that board's fear was has probably happened now. Now, an argument was made when we brought it up several years ago, was made that there was one department that comes in at 7:30. And so they make up for their half an hour. I think it's just something we have to look into, because the idea behind it was justified, and I think it's kind of drifted from there.
Well, 8 to 4:30 with a half-hour lunch is an 8-hour day. That's a 40-hour week.
But I think some people take hour lunches. I'm not sure.
I don't know. I'll have to find the old handbook because it was put in there. Because by law, you're to get 15-minute breaks, and none of the offices give 15-minute breaks. And Paulette and Joyce had put that in the handbook to justify that, and that's where that was made up, where the 4:30 was justified.
Because you don't get a break.
Yeah.
Before.
So instead of having 2 15-minute breaks,
we get
4:30 instead of 5.
And there's times that my girls and Susie's girls are here till 4:45 because someone will come right in the door at 4:30, and we'll have to still make their title. They'll have to go next door and make their tax or pay their taxes, and then we still can't leave because we cannot give someone their title till they pay their sales tax. So there's times my girls won't get out of here till, we don't leave till 5, because we still then don't balance till that last title's been made. And Susie, we run over and tell them, we still have a customer, they snuck in right at 4:30,
And to walk back some of that too, is I'm not real sure that prior board had a 15-minute allowance. Things change in time. I don't know if that was part of the equation or not, but I don't think so, because I had quite a discussion with him. So that's just some background history on what happened. So I am sorry to interject.
No worries. Another one that we need to figure out is vacation leave. Some offices are granting full vacation at the beginning of the year. Other offices are granting it at the end of the year. So potentially you run into a situation if somebody quits in February or whatever. They got all their vacation that you have to pay out or whatever. So that's, I don't know. It's a weird position to be. You're trying to make things work out, but you can't really.
Can you carry that vacation over a year or not?
Till June.
Yeah.
Till June. A couple ways of thinking of that, like maybe somebody wants to go every January to Acapulco, and that's their family vacation or whatever, so you're kind of limiting those guys. They have to carry that vacation over. But I think you can put some wording in there where you say, you know what, here's our policy. You can take all your vacation for that year, but it's still prorated. And if you quit in February, then those weren't vacation days. We're gonna take that off your salary at the end of at your termination. You know, those 4 days or whatever, you know, that you were over prorated on. I think you can work that out.
Maybe,
It actually makes it easier to track everybody's vacation if you give it everybody their vacation January 1st. It's a lot easier for them to track everybody's vacation if you just give them a day every month or something. Man, that becomes a nightmare. But yes, then you just prorate. If they quit, then they don't get paid out.
Well, and another thing, if they don't have it, they can never really go on a vacation. If you're only given 8 hours every month,
Go on
you
vacation
can
in
never
December.
really go on
And
it, and then everybody's gone at the same time.
Yes,
They've ran into those problems before. Everybody's wanting to be gone at the same time.
so with my concern with that, so you're still running into that same issue. What if one of the elected says, that's not how I'm gonna do it? So we as a board need to try to figure out a way to try to force a certain path for everybody to follow, maybe, that is copacetic with everybody can be okay with it.
I think they've all kind of had their own head for a while, but I think if you get together with them, I think most of this is just common sense. You start looking at it.
So I think because this wasn't on the agenda, we just kind of threw this. Of course, we can't make any decisions. We haven't really qualified it. But I think if you put those list of questions down, and we get Jeannie or whomever, so that we can directly ask, you know, is this legal? Is this copacetic, like to use your word?
Yeah, she was pretty, it was a good look. I mean, we were in there for a couple hours. It was a good conversation we had, and I think there was some good things that came out of it. I think lacking an HR person, a designated HR person, is probably not a good thing for the county.
I think we ran into that before. Now, something that was brought up to us before was, and Becky probably remembers this, but there was a basic manual, and then each department had what was called a manager's manual. And so they could come up with some that were just a little different, like when you say this works for the sheriff, but this would work for road and bridge, this works for this. And so they had their separate little manuals, but the basis of the manual was for everyone. And that's what came from LGLP.
And see, when you start, you have to sign. Every employee, every department head, every elected official has to sign it.
Sign anything.
We didn't
Well,
sign
Elected, I don't think have to.
Well, you don't, but I did.
So
It doesn't pertain to you because you don't have vacation and stuff like that.
See, that letter you were talking about, like I can see where you're gonna have that manual's gonna get convoluted, and I think those, like Road and Bridge is gonna have another manual, and in that, it's gonna say, anything in here supersedes anything in there if there's a conflict.
Yeah.
And that way, you still have that overarching document that kind of guides everybody. But then if they've have to have a different policy for overtime or snow emergencies, they've got it in there and they can go back and say, no, this is in the manual. I know what it says in the handbook, but this is the one that is above it.
Yeah.
Or you make the basis manual so generic that it doesn't have to be superseded. It doesn't do anything. I understand that, but there are some things that would be straight across the board for everybody. There still would be those things. This is when you need to be here. This is our drug and enforcement policy.
Which
this
is,
is our,
in a lot of ways, is kind of what we have.
right.
Well,
And
and
so, and I'm sorry, I'm not trying to interrupt you, but that's what the intent is to have that, and that each department would have their managerial book. Now the problem is, did the board go back and see what your managerial? We asked on several. Did you have one? Did you have one? Everybody shook. Well, I'm still working on it. Yeah.
That office there was the only one.
I think that was the only one.
See, we have one, and that's what I thought we were doing was updating the small one
and leaving the big
And
one.
she was, right, and she was putting the little legal things that she wanted added to that small one, not a whole new thick one that a new employee is gonna be so lost in.
Although, you know, in a conversation that you and I had, is that if you were gonna work at the mine, you're gonna sit down, you're gonna read it. And there's gonna be a supervisor who says, do you understand? Because you're not coming back on us to say,
right,
I sat here, I watched you, do you understand?
There's the first 3 hours of your job.
Right, and we're gonna pay you to understand what this manual is. And I'm not sure that's not a bad idea, in some ways, but.
I think you go back to that little simple manual and you try to make it fit for everybody. You don't have a standardized set of policies for your vacation or for, you know, and that's what, in my mind, that's the big goal is let's try to get everybody on the same page. So it's fair for everyone and our liability is decreased as much as we can.
Yeah, I think there's maybe as much of a third of this that maybe could just be tossed out.
Or put into a managerial.
Managerial, yeah.
Now, each of us pick out of that what we want in ours and go from there.
And but I think the understanding would have to be that some of those things that apply to everyone are congruent and they're the same, you know, so that we don't have these real issues of, well, I can take this one, but you can't take that one, and we have this competition going on. You
So
see what I'm
like
saying?
that be the employee manual and that be our department head manual or our office manual.
Your manager.
Yes.
So, and I think that was the goal of the first one.
In your current manual, is there a ladder to follow in like a chain of command that one of your employees has to, if they have an issue, who do they go to? Is it you first they have to go to?
If that would be best.
So right now in this manual, it's actively encouraging them to go around to somebody else if that's what they need to do, which I understand that, and that's being a necessity possibly. But again, we don't have an HR person to be that sounding board, so I don't know.
But as the boss, I would rather my employee come to me if they have an issue and try and fix it in-house first. And then if that can't be fixed in-house, then we go.
Well, I could.
Unless it's an issue with the boss.
And I was just gonna say,
then they can go elsewhere.
Which could easily happen though.
The steps should be, you know.
Say that employee goes over to another elected official, and then that elected official is trying to handle whatever situation this is, and I could certainly drive a wedge I could see between two departments if potentially.
It does.
So I don't know. I'm not saying we need an HR person, but is there some company out there that provides a service?
But it didn't work out. One from Colorado or
Yeah, we've tried it. I think there's a potential for something like that to work out. There's kind of some power dynamics in there, which seems to always happen with all these elected offices. But you know, I think you almost have to, and in my mind it makes sense to put in the clerk's office, but have somebody that part-time, their job is HR. You know, and I don't know if you can justify another half-time that goes to HR and half-time that in your office, or maybe that other half-time they go to the treasurer's office, or they go to Road and Bridge or wherever. You know, somebody that's in that office that's dealing with vacation time, sick time, payroll, all that on a daily basis. That's your day-to-day HR stuff. And then, but also has the training that, you know, if there's a situation, they'd come in and say, look, my boss at this office has, you know, threatened to fire me for chewing gum. Stupid example.
Yeah, that was in my office meeting. I took it out.
You know, what do I do about it? And they would have the training to direct them, you know, to where, and it's not, they don't feel like they have to go to their elected official, and in my mind, they dang sure shouldn't be going to another elected official. Like, we've gotta give them an avenue to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
And that would be that avenue.
I'm not in this, but I used to be in human resources, so you can't have that person in her office.
That's what I was gonna say, you
You
can't
can't.
do that.
They have to be their own entity.
Mm-hmm.
And I hate, I'm not saying.
That person could do payroll and everything too, but they have to be their own. They have to be a neutral party. You can't put them in the clerk's office or the treasurer's office.
Physical location or subordination to that office.
Probably both.
Well, I sent out an email to the other clerks, and almost every other county, if they don't have a separate HR person, the HR person is the county clerk.
Do you have any HR training?
No, I'm just saying.
I know,
But because I knew that this was an issue, and so I reached out to all the other counties to see what they do.
Britt went to college, didn't she?
Yes.
Just join in, we're kind of informal.
The problem, even if it was the other county clerks, it goes back to, again, there's still conflict there. If the county clerk is the HR person, whether they're qualified or not, then you're gonna have to interdepartment issues, because, well, you have the HR person you're gonna have a perception that there's favoritism there, and that's,
I don't know how they do it.
I don't know either. I'm just saying I still see problems with that.
But if you have that manual and it's standardized and it says this is how vacation's treated, and they're doing their vacation the way it's supposed to, then it should. You can just say,
Yeah, you're right. But see, this book has way too many, I'm gonna say, choices. I don't like it that you can pick and choose what parts you're gonna, as a department head, file. I don't want this in my department. Yeah, there's some things that are irrelevant, but say coming from the oil field, and I had 126 in safety, but we still had one policy, procedure, and employee manual. If those things were irrelevant, well, they're irrelevant. But if they apply to your department, you don't get to pick and choose what you're gonna take out of there. And like you said, and in here, that one comment, employees have the right to ignore the normal chain of command in selecting which person to whom they come. It shouldn't be they get to pick which person. It should be the next person that's designated for HR or something like that, because then you're going to get into, I told my coworker, who then told their coworker, who then told. It's just going to get really ugly fast.
Well, and what happens is and Tony nailed it on the head there, is we're human beings, and so what happens is there is a power struggle. It's a hierarchy thing. And it happens, and pretty soon you get somebody stomping a foot. Why didn't you come to me first? Why did you go this way? Why did you do that? And so the decisions that are maybe spontaneous decisions, thinking you're doing your best, well, then you get in trouble for it because it's not the way XYZ wanted you to do it. So I think you have to have it pretty well laid out, even if it's in your manual, whatever. But then have an overview too if that doesn't work out for them, because sometimes it is the elected official that is the problem. Sometimes it is. So you have to have an avenue somewhere along that, and this county needs to find that. How that's going to work. Even if it was out of this realm, and I'm just stabbing for stuff, but if you could, and I'm not advocating this, but if you could go over to the city and had somebody there that would listen to, and then come back. Try to work something out. I'm not advocating that. I'm just trying to reach for a solution. But I just think you have to do something. And I do think you have to have certain things that are the same across the board, because of this competition thing that happens. And if you changed offices, if you moved from office to office, you wouldn't want to lose anything.
My personal feeling is that we kind of, and maybe you guys feel differently, I don't know, but I feel like this is way off of what we were trying to do. And I don't know how we get that back. Maybe Jeannie would be willing to work with us, but if whatever time she's put in, it just feels like it's miles from where I thought we were going with it, and that could just be me.
Well, just to defend, I think probably what happened is she looked through the lens of a lawyer. And so what happened is she looked through the lens, the lawyer said, red flag, red flag, red flag, and decided got a fix for red flags.
And LGLP would love that.
Yeah, and you know, we had LGLP doing it, and they red flagged it, and we didn't go back and fix it, so.
I guess I'm not sure how we salvage it. Just basically doing workshops and communications and trying to get this back, or do we say let's take a step back from this and redirect? I'm not exactly sure, because I mean there's obviously was some work put into this.
I think what you do, and this is just my opinion, you let me know, because you've been on it, is you allow that committee to work it out, just like we did before. They hashed out all those things, and then it came, and I did kind of feel sorry for the couple people that had to come and sit before us, because we started hashing out them too, you know, we didn't understand, why did you do this? So they take those ideas back, and they hash them out, and then they come back, and they had good reasons why they left some of them in, and we would understand that. I think that's what, I mean, if the Board of County Commissioners are the policymakers for that type of thing, and we can't make ordinances, but we can make a policy, then that's, I think you allow the people that are immersed to hash those details out. Go ahead.
I guess from my perspective, I think there's some things that need tweaked in there, but in my mind, this is what we were getting, and this is what this county needs to keep it on a solid legal foundation going forward. So I think we're where we need to be. I think there's some things that need tweaked in there, but I think we gotta have that. I mean, other people's manuals look like that.
They do, and just like we were talking about, you get to sit down and spend your first 3 hours understanding what it is you came to work for.
I don't
You'll sign the
have
dotted line.
major problems with it. I think that there is sections that just, and I don't think that you get much pushback from Jeannie either, saying, you know, this doesn't really apply. And let's maybe, what do you think of, and maybe she'd have a good answer of why it would apply that I'm not seeing.
Well, I think we need to know what the legal basis is of why she thinks that is that. Because we don't see things through that lens.
Yeah, I think it's
We certainly, I mean, I think we've allowed ourselves to be set up several times.
yeah, and there's work that needs to be figured out here, but I just think, I don't know if Jeannie's gonna be around after the end of the year, so. This may be, we evolve it even after she's gone. Does this necessarily have to be implemented at the next meeting? I don't think so.
I don't think so.
We don't wanna push it.
Yeah.
No.
And it not be what you guys are wanting, and we have a handbook that's completely off. I think that's what happened maybe before, and now that's why we're trying to fix it.
Well, it took us 2 years.
So the good thing is if we can get it on the agenda for the next meeting while she's still here. I'm not saying she's going anywhere, I don't know that she is. We field those questions to her at the next meeting, and then next year, there's gonna be 2 new board members that may not have quite the understanding of it. But, I mean, it's nice that Vera's here.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here to listen to it.
We have a special meeting day on the handbook, because we have other things that are going on after the meeting next week. Like there's 2 commissioners that are retiring, and we already have things planned.
Oh, you're throwing a party?
Yeah.
Like
Way
a
to spoil
bonfire?
Is that what the wheelchairs were for?
Yeah.
Oh.
Like, you
So we really can't have a 2-hour discussion on the handbook.
You're gonna burn them at the stake on the way out?
No, but I can't have a 2-hour discussion on the handbook, sorry.
And I would really like to be involved in it.
Yeah.
Really would.
Yeah, I don't see any reason why it has to be done.
Because I do have some experience in this, so I'd really like to.
Well, I'll make you a copy of the handbook so you can look at it.
I have a copy of our handbook.
No, the new one.
The new
is
one,
thick.
yes, I'd like to probably see that.
Yeah, because,
I mean, there's federal and state laws, you have to have those things in there. But then the rest is your personal policy, a lot of it. I think your handbook's fine. I think I'm kind of agreeing with you, and it's not even my thing to say yet, but, you know, you can have a binder with your generalized handbook. Then you have a tab that says road and bridge. And then it's gonna be the policies of road and bridge. And then you have a handbook that says sheriff's department. And so you have it all in the same book. You can't pick and choose because everybody should see everything, or somebody might complain that they didn't get a chance to review it all. But it doesn't necessarily pertain to everyone. So, just like in a lot of companies are like that, you have your generalized part of your handbook, and then there's, say, a part where it's for just the hourly people, and then there's people for salary people, and then there's for people that work in the field, and then there's people office people. I mean, that's silly, simplifying it, but it's still all in the same manual or the same handbook. It's just separated out because everybody has different needs. But does that make sense?
Well, it does in the fact that, I mean, you're not gonna ask the treasurers to get
right.
to get a drug
Everybody
test.
needs to know about how FMLA works, and everybody needs to know about how your insurance works, and everybody's vacation should be treated the same, and everybody's comp time should be treated the same, and overtime. That should all be generally the same for everybody, no matter what you're doing, because you're all working for the county. But then
there has to be exceptions with road and bridge, sure.
Yes, and then so you go into those things in each section.
Sure.
That's why I don't really understand the opt-out page, because you are, I don't care who you are, if you're employed by the county, you're a county employee.
See, and I think that employees should be of that persuasion. As far, there's other statutes that are with elected officials. I mean, you only have to show up one day in the 90 days, or, if you're ill, or, I mean, there's statutes for that. Not that they shouldn't be changed or whatever, but that's the elected official.
Yeah, but even the girls in my office, they are my employees, but they are county employees, and they have to follow that handbook that you guys produce for them. I might have a little added one that I expect them to follow in my office, but they have to sign that, and they have to follow the manual that you produce for them.
That's, why is it even in here? That's why I don't understand.
I don't know.
It's your job to take it out.
It shouldn't even be an option. They follow the manual that you, as the board, produce for them, whether they're my employee or not.
Well, that was the sticky, that was the sticky wicket though, because the idea was, well, they're my employee, so you can't fire my employee.
So I think
You can't do things to my employee when they're my employee and I directed them to go.
Well, I think there's a lot of truth in that.
I think there is some.
I don't think we can go
You
and
can't
make a vote
fire
right here
them,
and fire one of Becky's
But they
employees.
still have to follow the policy that the county produces.
I think that what the whole purpose is here is to find some policy that is an umbrella for entire employees. We're not asking to have an umbrella. State statute is gonna have the umbrella for elected officials. If you want that state statute changed, you go talk to your legislator. But in order to have that, I agree with you fully. We are giving that, the whole duty of the budget, how many people are in that, the whole thing, up to that elected official. But if they're gonna fall under the company of Weston County, they're company employees.
They're a county employee.
Now,
But it
if
is
she's,
still a sticky spot.
They're not a,
but if she says in her world, I'm not gonna allow you to wear jeans, that's a department.
And then they can say,
I'm not wearing anything. I don't know.
Palisand, I'm a county employee, I'm not your employee.
I don't think they are our employees. I'm agreeing with you, but they are the company's employees, just as we are the company's employees.
And
We
she's
are
a
the
division of the company,
and
so
we're
therefore
the
she can have some of her own rules.
And we're the supervisors of that division.
But she is a duly elected person of this county.
But
That's
we
where
write
the
the
gray area
policy.
gets in.
But we write the
you're making
policy.
my head hurt.
And you could have a county official easily say, no, I'm not following that.
So I think as this board, if you
That's
do
where
that,
you have to develop teeth, like
teeth in
board.
there that says, then we will only fund you for X, Y, Z. I think that's where you have to find what the legality of that is. That if you don't sign this, now it seems like we're gonna talk about whatever article they were talking about, Article 3, whatever, about bribery and extortion. But I don't know if that doesn't fit in. Well, I think if you say, if you don't sign this, we're not paying you. I don't know if you can do that. That's what I'm asking for a legal. Yeah. So.
You don't show up to work when we tell you to, even though your direct supervisor is telling you differently.
Well, I think that gives the teeth to the department head. That goes back to the thing. It says right here, you signed it. You'll come here at 8 o'clock. We're gonna see you at 5 or 4 or whatever. Got an hour lunch. I need you to be here at 8 o'clock, not 8:15, not 8:20, not 8:30. Okay. This does deserve time. So, is there anything else to bring before the board?
Thanks.
Hearing nothing, is there any public comment?
I wanted to thank you guys for allowing me to ask questions about just particulars on stuff and clarifying it. Sometimes it gets confusing when you sit here, and I'm sure that some of the viewers that see these videos look and go, they don't understand what's going on. And so I think that kind of really helps. And I wanted to thank you. That's it.
Walter, you're welcome to ask anything anytime. Anybody is. I hope that is conveyed to anyone.
Okay. What color socks are you wearing?
Yes, we will. Do you have the
Pretty vague.
oath of office? Can you give me one? Yeah, big here now. No, I'll do it. I won't do it in office. Okay, if I hear this meeting is adjourned, thank you.
Do you want this videoed?
I mean, then